would you please welcome Linda Trinh?
Well, thank you everyone for sticking around to listen to me and talking about how to increase your physical activity and reduce prolonged sitting time among cancer survivors. So I think this is the cue to, is this the machine? All right. So the benefits of physical activity has been very well established for cancer survivors. So there's lots of research showing that exercise is beneficial. It can help you increase your quality of life. It can help with physical well-being and functional well-being, and it can reduce cancer-related fatigue, which many of you know that affects about 70 to almost 100% of patients who are undergoing treatment. It can help to improve cardiorespiratory fitness or aerobic fitness, which is a powerful indicator of mortality. It can help increase your muscular strength, which is also important during the treatment period and the survivorship period, given that there's a lot of muscle mass loss going on while you're on these type of drugs. And it can also help increase your psychological health, including anxiety levels, reducing your depression levels, and improving your mood throughout treatment and throughout the survivorship period. It can help increase your body system, so increasing your immune system so that your body can recognize abnormal cells in the body. And it can help reduce your body fat, which is very important given that many cancers are obesity linked. It can help improve overall survival, and it can reduce your cancer from coming back. And again, based on the previous presentations, it can actually help with improving your kidney function. So the benefits of exercise are beneficial at all phases of the cancer care continuum. So there's lots of research showing that exercise can help reduce the cancer from happening in the first place, so in terms of cancer prevention. And it can help during the post-diagnosis. Once you're diagnosed with cancer, it can help with the survivorship period in preventing your cancer from coming back again. It can help in the palliation phase in terms of reducing functional decline during the end-of-life stage. And it can help manage some of your side effects during treatment as well. So this has prompted the American Cancer Society to develop specific nutrition and physical activity guidelines for cancer survivors. So how many of you in the room know or are aware of these guidelines for cancer survivors? Okay, so not very many. So how many of you are aware of the general guidelines for the general population? Okay, so a little bit more hands. So there are actually physical activity guidelines for cancer survivors, and they're very much in line with the physical activity guidelines for the general population and in line with the Canadian public health guidelines as well. So what it suggests is that cancer survivors should be active for 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity per week. So that's about 2.5 hours of moderate intensity physical activity, or you can do 75 minutes of vigorous intensity activity per week, or any combination between the two. And it's also beneficial to add strength training activities at least 2 times a week. And the idea is that the more physical activity that you do, the greater the health benefits. So research in physical activity in kidney cancer has been growing in the last couple of years. So we know that once you have been diagnosed with cancer or kidney cancer, the survival rate is actually growing to about 67% of kidney cancer patients do live beyond 5 years. And that's according to the latest Canadian cancer statistics. Although we have increasing incidence rates for kidney cancer, the survival rate is increasing. So most studies focusing on exercise and kidney cancer have been done in the prevention side of things, so preventing kidney cancer from happening in the first place. So the research shows that it can reduce the risk by 22%. So over the last couple of years, we've seen a handful of studies in the physical activity in kidney cancer survivors, and this is where some of the work that I've done with some of my colleagues in Alberta, where we looked at kidney cancer survivors and the effects of physical activity with them. So we found that over 50% of kidney cancer survivors are physically inactive, so they're not meeting physical activity guidelines. And we found that only a quarter of them, or 25%, are physically active to accrue health benefits. So again, there's lots of research gaps that exist during the treatment phase. We don't have any studies looking at how exercise can help with kidney cancer survivors during the treatment phase. We've got some studies starting to emerge in the survivorship phase, but we don't really have any research showing how it will help during the end of life stages, especially in the palliation phases of the cancer care continuum. So this is some of the data that I collected in Alberta looking at over 700 kidney cancer survivors. So this was collected through the Alberta Cancer Registry. So we did a survey asking kidney cancer survivors about their quality of life and then about the amount of physical activity that they do. So we see here that the quality of life, especially fatigue levels, starts to decrease when, or quality of life starts to increase with the more physical activity you do. And you see sort of a sharp increase in terms of those who are doing no physical activity to those who are doing some physical activity. And this graph really shows that your quality of life improves with more physical activity that you do, which is very encouraging. So how do you start to achieve these physical activity recommendations? How do you start an exercise program? Well, I can give you some practical tips today for you to take home. So one of the things is you want to start off with 2 to 3 times a week of aerobic activity, especially if you're new to exercise and you're beginning exercise. And you want to gradually build to about 5 days a week. And how hard should you exercise? Well, you should be active at a moderate intensity. So you want to be able to carry out a conversation, but you can't sing. So that's kind of the idea of what moderate intensity looks like. So many of you would argue that I can't sing anyway, but you know, it's a start. So you want to, the idea of moderate activity is to walk quickly as if you were late for an appointment. So some sort of brisk walking would actually count as part of this moderate activity. Or you can be active at a vigorous intensity. For those who want to do a little bit more exercise, you can try doing aerobics or try doing jogging, for example. And this sort of intensity is that you can say only a few words before taking a breath. So this is the idea of vigorous intensity exercise. And the time you should be active, well, you should try to accumulate at least 10 minutes at a time. So you want to build up to at least 30 minutes of physical activity throughout the day. So if you do it 5 times a week for 30 minutes a day, you will have 150 minutes of physical activity for the week. And you don't have to do it all at once. I think most people are very turned off when they hear about this 2.5 hours that you have to accumulate. You can do it in 10-minute bouts. So you can do 10 minutes of walking in the morning, 10 minutes of walking during lunch, and 10 minutes of walking in the evening. And there you have 30 minutes of exercise. And the type of activity that you do is really up to you. So a lot of times traditional exercise is going to the gym and going on the treadmill or going on the elliptical or Stairmaster. But now we're thinking of other sort of activities that you can do. And one of the ways that you can achieve these physical activity guidelines is through walking itself. So you want to choose an activity that is fun and enjoyable and something that you look forward to doing. And you can choose activities that make your heart beat faster, such as brisk walking, biking, swimming, dancing, or golfing, for example. And what about resistance training? So this is your strength training. So you want to be active for 2 to 3 days a week with at least 48 hours of recovery between the sessions. So the idea is that you'll do your aerobic activity, and usually most people do follow it by doing some sort of strength training afterwards. So you want to do it at about 65 to 75% of your one repetition max. So the 1 repetition max is essentially the amount of weight that you can lift once, but you want to do it at 65 to 75% of that. So essentially you want to choose a weight that you can lift comfortably for about 8 to 12 repetitions. And after that, you should feel that you can only do 1 or 2 more. So if you can do about 10 more, it means that the weight is a little bit too light and you have to increase the weight. And you want to do it at least 1 to 2 sets per session. And you want to choose the type that would work on major muscle groups. So this would include your legs, your back, your chest, your shoulders, and your arms. And you can use any kind of combination of strength training. So you can use the traditional dumbbells, you can use resistance machines, you can use exercise bands, or even your own body weight. So a chair to sit stand, for example, or sit to stand for using a chair would be one example of using your body weight. And you also want to incorporate stretching as well. So stretching can help you prevent any injuries that may happen with exercise over time. So again, a stretching routine should be done after your exercise. So it should not be done before exercising. It should be done after you warm up and after you do your aerobic activity. So you want to make sure you stretch all major muscle groups after a workout. and it can help you improve the range of motion of your muscles as well. And again, stretches should be static. You shouldn't be bouncing around while you're doing this. And you want to breathe naturally, and you want to get into a position where you can hold comfortably without pain for about 30 to 60 seconds, and you want to repeat that 2 or 3 times on each side. So how do you plan for physical activity? So how do you actually get going? So a lot of us are really good at forming an intention to be physically active. But research has shown is that the more detailed your planning is for physical activity, the likelihood of you being able to translate it into behavior. So a nice way is to really schedule physical activity in your day. So you can do walking about 30 minutes on Monday. For example, this person is going to do walking Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 30 minutes so that they have 90 minutes by the end of the week. But they're also going to include some sort of vigorous swimming for 30 minutes. So when you do vigorous activity, you can double weight that, and it counts as double the amount. So as you can see here, this person's done 90 minutes of moderate physical activity, and then vigorous activity counts for 60 minutes, and they have 150 minutes of physical activity. So it's nice to be able to decide where you're going to do your physical activity, so at a gym or a walking trail or outside. So be as detailed as possible. And again, being physically active with someone is a great way to be accountable to one another and to really increase your motivation levels for physical activity. So this person decided to go with John for walking, for example. So these are some of the common barriers that kidney cancer survivors have cited for beginning a physical activity program. So I want to take some time to go through some of these most common barriers, and they're probably in line with the general population as well. I'm going to give you some strategies on how you can combat these. So the greatest barrier to physical activity is that you have no time. So essentially, a lot of us are busy, we work, we have kids, so really scheduling physical activity is very difficult. So what you want to do is you want to exercise first thing in the morning. So get that done with, and then you have the rest of your day to do whatever you need to do. You want to use exercise as part of transportation. So do sort of active commuting. You want to exercise for a longer duration during the weekend so you can accumulate that physical activity, and schedule a workout in your agenda as if it was a meeting. But what if you have to work during the day? So what happens when you have to work? Well, you be active during the lunch hour. You try to plan active work meetings. So instead of having sitting meetings, you're doing walking meetings. You can start walking to work, or you can try to get off a few stops early if you're commuting by transit, and walk the rest of the way. So again, you can accumulate in 10-minute bouts. So what if you're too tired? So a lot of the times, fatigue is a major side effect for treatment. So you can try to exercise on days and duration when your fatigue is at your lowest. And you can reduce your intensity and duration, but try to avoid inactivity. And again, you can accumulate in 10-minute bouts. And that's the important kind of take-home key message, in that you don't have to do everything at once as long as you try to do it in 10-minute bouts. And what if you have no health or medical problems? So if you have other sort of comorbidities, such as osteoporosis and arthritis, exercise is actually very beneficial. So you want to exercise at a level you can tolerate. You want to choose low-impact activities, such as a bike or swimming, for example. And again, the magic thing is to accumulate in 10-minute bouts throughout the day. And what if it's too hot? And what if it's too cold? So right now we have an issue of being too cold. So there's also mall walking that you can partake in. Many malls actually have a walking program that you can join in the morning, where you can actually cycle around the mall or walk around the mall to achieve your health or your physical activity levels. And you can be active in the middle of the day when the weather is warmest, or later in the day when it's the coolest. So what if you don't have a gym where you live? Well, you're going to choose an activity that really involves minimal equipment, such as walking, for example, or try to locate parks and trails near your area. And another idea you can do is purchase some home equipment, such as a bike or a treadmill, or even a DVD, for example. So again, some safety considerations when you're doing exercise. You should stop exercising if you notice an irregular pulse, if you notice chest pains, dizziness, blurred vision, fainting, shortness of breath, for example. So you want to be aware of all these signs and symptoms while you're exercising, and to stop if you feel any of these symptoms. And you want to make sure you stay hydrated while you're exercising. So I just wanted to end off by talking a little bit and shifting gears about sedentary behavior and the health hazards of too much sitting. So sitting is now optional for the remainder of the presentation, so feel free to stand up. And I know Deb said she'll stand for the remainder of the presentation or for the rest of the presentation. So now there's actually emerging evidence that shows the health risk associated with too much sitting. So I know all of you are probably thinking, you're asking me to increase my physical activity, now you're asking me to think about my sitting. And yes, I'm asking you to do that. So, but the idea is to be mindful about the amount of time that you sit and to be conscious about that. So again, what exactly is sedentary behavior? So sedentary behavior is defined as any waking behavior characterized by energy expenditure of less than 1.5 METs while in a sitting or reclining position. So this is your prolonged bouts of sitting. And it's distinct from physical inactivity that it's not the same as meeting or not meeting guidelines. So it neglects the fact of light physical activity that can actually be beneficial. So again, if you look at more than half of your, look at your total sitting time for a day, you've got 15 hours where you can spend sitting. So from the time that you wake up and the time you go to bed, there's only a small percentage spent on physical activity. So you can see this 30 minutes of strength training that this person's doing. So there's lots of opportunities for sitting. So what you want to do is be conscious about the amount of time that you sit. So there's emerging evidence that shows that cancer risk is higher for someone like Anne at the very top, who's doing no physical activity, but also no breaks in their sitting time. And then you have a person like Joe who's doing physical activity, but also taking breaks throughout their day, and they are at the lowest risk for cancer. So it's the amount of sitting time is independent of whether or not you achieve the physical activity guidelines. So again, this is a biological model of the hypothesized pathways. So again, literature is emerging in this area. Sedentary behavior is known to increase your body fat, which starts a chain of reaction for other things such as increase in sex hormones and metabolic dysfunction and inflammation, for example, which can lead to cancer risk and progression. So again, if you look at sedentary behavior, some of the data that we collected in Alberta is that the more that you sit, the lower your quality of life. So for those, it seems like for those who are doing 0 to 4 hours of sitting, they seem to have the highest of quality of life compared to those who are doing greater than 7 hours of sitting. And this is data specifically for kidney cancer survivors. So how can we sit less and move more? So there are a few things that you can do. So you want to set up a timer so you can stand up every 30 minutes to an hour for 2 minutes. So you can download an application called My Rest Break on Google, and then you can actually decrease your sitting time. So it's a prompt that comes out on your computer, especially for those who work at a work-based setting, that reminds you to stand. You can stand up during commercial breaks, do household chores while watching television. You can stand up while talking on the phone, doing active emails. So instead of writing emails, you're going to go to the person's desk to deliver the message. And if you're an avid reader, try to stand up after reading every 6 pages of a book. And if you have kids and you go to sporting events or arenas, try to pace the sidelines at the sporting events to get kind of every angle of the sporting event. You can stand while you read the morning paper, get off a few stops early, and walk the rest of the way. So again, you want to find creative ways to interrupt your sitting time in addition to meeting the physical activity guidelines. So I just wanted to leave with you in that some take-home messages. So physical activity is beneficial before, after, and during treatment. And try to achieve at least 150 minutes of moderate physical activity or 75 minutes of vigorous activity. And I like that everybody's standing right here on this side of the room and nobody's standing on the left side. So you want to be as active as your abilities and conditions allow and avoid inactivity. And select an activity that is fun and enjoyable, and avoid inactivity and prolonged bouts of sitting. So what you really want to do is don't take cancer sitting or lying down, and take charge of your health. Thank you.
Now, I thought that was a good hint for you, just in honor of everything Linda said, to give her a standing ovation.